Hi, everyone. So I've been asked repeatedly to address something that seems to be a stumbling block for a lot of people in their lives, and to offer up my perspective of how to heal and how to even reverse the effects of psychological, emotional, and even physical trauma. So I've titled this video, "The Value of Trauma." Because the first step is that anytime that anything traumatic or that we might view as hurtful happens to us, our immediate reaction, not response, but reaction, is to identify ourselves as the victim. And whether that is a role that you adopt long-term or whether that's a very fleeting moment, we tend to, in our human brains, identify someone, if we're talking about two people in an equation, as the aggressor and the other person as the victim. And the reason why we do this is a really old school sort of monkey brain technique that we've adapted in our human brain to learn how to survive in an environment with wild animals that could kill us at any time, and to learn what was necessary for survival. However, it's a really archaic and outdated form of thought and thought pattern. So my first tip in diffusing any kind of trauma, or at least pointing in the direction of wanting to resolve, again, emotional, spiritual, even physical trauma, is you have to go back to that point of origin. Now, I'm not talking about unpacking and living there. I'm simply talking about going back to the moment or the general time frame that this trauma occurred and thinking back to what really happened. And see if you can do that and take it a step further by viewing the event from an objective perspective. So for example, if you were to view yourself as the victim in this scenario, try to see the event or the trauma through the eyes of the aggressor. What were they thinking? What were they feeling? What happened? Perhaps in your scenario or situation, there was no aggressor, so to speak, but there was certainly an equal and opposite force that caused you to absorb something that you felt was to your detriment or that in some way wounded you. So put yourself in the position of what could have caused that, whether that is someone else's emotional state, their anger, their aggression, or maybe this is an outside or external event. When we do this, we can begin to unpack all of the ways that things happen in our lives. And we can begin to empower ourselves by knowing that it's not necessarily about being targeted. It's not about being victimized. It's about seeing that a sometimes completely neutral event has occurred, and we have chosen to react instead of respond to this stimulus. And that's really what it is stimulus. If I touch something, nails down a chalkboard, for example. Now, lots of people would find that really offensive. However, to someone else, it might not bother them so much. We all have our little pet peeves, but it is at its core neutral stimulus. We get to decide whether that is positive or negative. The power lies within your perception. And I'm not saying or undermining any experience that anyone has gone through. But if you're really serious about diffusing trauma and moving on with your life, whether that's a breakup, an illness, whether that's the loss of somebody that you really loved, which is an entirely separate video, it's really about understanding that something has occurred and our power, our only power, but the only power that we need lies in our response, not our reaction. So step one is to diffuse the reaction. Try to see it from the equal and opposite perspective of where you have viewed yourself in this scenario. After that, the second step is that you have to understand that trauma has value. Nothing that we build, no structure, no any organic element in this world is really ever truly fortified unless it goes through some sort of a test. The number one key ingredient that all species, certainly humans included, need in order to evolve and survive, the thing that differentiates us from other species that have become extinct in prehistoric eras, is our ability to adapt and to evolve from that adaptation. Now, the great thing about adaptation is that you cannot adapt and you certainly can't evolve without experience. You only learn the keys to adaptation through facing something which is sort of a restrictive stimulus or something that challenges you to grow. It's something that forces you to step outside of your comfort zone and to become stronger, even if it doesn't feel like it at the time, and more adept at dealing with and then foreseeing some of the challenges that come down the road. The ultimate key here is that the power begins and ends with ourselves, in our minds, in our hearts, in our spirit, and in our energy. The moment that we begin to lend that power to external illnesses, people, or circumstances is the moment that we start to slip back into victimization mode. And the reason that it feels so gross, so disgusting, and so ugly to be in that mode, the reason why it conjures up so much aggression within us is because we know it's not true. Our spirit, our soul, our true self knows something different than the current story that we are telling ourselves. That's why it feels the way that it does. And the moment that you decide to switch that framework and challenge your perception is the moment that you flip the switch and change the scenario in your own life.